Hey everyone, this is Marc Sabatella. That's for music, home of MuseScore. And welcome to MuseScore Café. I think, because of what I'm doing, I'm running a bit differently today. And I have a little confidence that it's working correctly. So please keep telling me if you're hearing. Okay, excellent. That's good to know. So, let's try this. All right. Better sound here or not is the question. I think I know what's happening. My other computer is locked up and I'm going to have to reboot it. So give me a moment here and just bear with me. But all right. So, hey everyone, this is Marc Sabatella. Oh, let me look at the right camera. Hey, this is my camera over here. This is MuseScore Café, and so the reason why I'm doing things differently here is I wanted to fire up my Windows computer, which I rarely do, because I'm going to be talking about file management, and I wanted to build a demo on Windows. And so I was going to have it up as a second system in addition to my regular Chromebook, but then my Chromebook locked up, and I said, like right as I was getting ready to go live, and not sure what's up with that. So right now I am broadcasting from my Windows computer, which I've never done before. And so it's not really set up for this. So meanwhile, I'm rebooting the other one. Let's talk about what I want to talk about here. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and we don't need any audio. So I'm going to screen share with no audio here. And hopefully that's a reasonable start point for us. And let's just see how things go. All right. I'm going to try this. All right. So you can see my screen. Yes. All right. And here's MuseScore Café. Great. So what I want to talk about is a whole lot of different issues involving file management. That is kind of the goal here. I am going to fire, while I talk, try to see if I can get my other computer going where I'm much more comfortable running the show. So let's talk about some of the topics that I said I was going to talk about. All right. So the main topic to talk about is where your files go. What are all the different kind of files that MuseScore deals with, and where do they go? And then how can you kind of keep track of them best? Okay, that is our main topic here. And so I want to show you a couple of things. I'm going to switch over to my just my Windows File Explorer here. And I want to show you that there is a folder so if you go to your documents, and it's on, similar stuff for Mac, but, you just have to know your way around. Windows, it's documents, right? And then you'll find a folder called MuseScore 4. I've got all these other folders left over from previous versions and tests that I've done and so forth. So here is what you are going to see in that folder. And let me also shrink this down so I can see chat better. Something's irritating my mic. Oh, I know what it is. Sorry about that. Okay. One moment. I can actually fix that. I don't want the headset mic. I want mic. Ha, that'll be better. That'll be a lot better. Thank you, Frank. That is a very good call. That is one thing I can fix. All right. So now that I've fixed that, hopefully, so let's talk about what you see in your MuseScore folder. So you're going to see the following folders. You're going to see under MuseScore 4. And by the way, for MuseScore 3, you just like I have MuseScore left over from MuseScore 1, MuseScore 2, MuseScore 3. And then I have all these test versions from, various different, if you're a developer, you end up creating all these separate folders so that you can keep your development environment separate from your your production environment is what we would say. So I've got all these extra folders. You probably just have a MuseScore 4 and a MuseScore 3. And if you've been using MuseScore long enough, you'll have a MuseScore 2 and maybe even a MuseScore, but you probably don't have anything else. So those are the folders where MuseScore keeps its stuff. And right there, just knowing that there's a separate MuseScore 3 and a MuseScore 4 folder, this is good to know for anyone still kind of moving from MuseScore 3 to MuseScore 4. What it means is if I go to open a score, like I'm in MuseScore here, and I say File, Open to open a score, did I do that right? Did I do something different? Did I say File, New? Maybe I did. File, Open. Come on, open. There we go. It's looking in a file. Oh, so that's the thing is this. I have this computer set up a little bit differently. I have it set up to use Google Drive. All right. So I'm going to talk about that in a moment, but I'm going to pretend for now that that is not the case. All right. I'm going to go back to Documents, MuseScore 4. And then scores. So these are my MuseScore 4 scores. You see there's nothing in here, right? That is because I am actually using Google Drive. So this is the first thing that I want to talk about. Well, it wasn't going to be the first, but now it is, all right? The whole fact that MuseScore 3 scores are in one folder and MuseScore 4 scores are in another by default is really nice because it helps make sure you don't accidentally do things like open a MuseScore 3 file and then save over it in MuseScore 4, then want to reopen it in MuseScore 3. It's still possible to do that, but you have to work at it, right? Because by default, these things are in separate folders. However, I have 3 different systems that I use on a regular basis. This Windows computer, okay, I say regular basis. No, not really. I rarely fire it up. But I have 2 different Chromebooks running, Chrome OS, which has Linux running on it also. So I have 3 different systems that I use. And I want to keep things synchronized between those systems. So this is entirely optional. If you're on Windows, if you only use Windows computers, you can use OneDrive for this. OneDrive will automatically synchronize things. So for instance, under my Documents folder here, you'll see all these green icons there. Notice all those green icons. Those are telling me that these folders are synchronized across OneDrive. On Mac OS, you've got something called Time Machine that I think can kind of sort of do something similar, but I see a couple people here who I know use Mac OS, several people here who use Mac OS, and maybe you all can talk more about how that works here in the chat. But on Windows, when you set up your computer, it normally asks you, well, you set up a Microsoft account and then it'll use OneDrive. OneDrive is fantastic for Windows because it means every time you save a file, it is immediately visible on any other Windows computer that you log into that same Microsoft account with. So if you're only using Windows, OneDrive is great for that. Or if you're only using Chromebooks, Google Drive is great for that, right? And so, however, since I'm using both, I have set up Google Drive on my Windows computer. So, and a lot of you probably have that set up also. And if not, you can certainly do so. But in Google Drive, I just have a folder called MuseScore. And I have actually set this up. So this is me, right? This isn't necessarily for everyone. I have things set up. I copied everything into that folder. I moved everything into the MuseScore folder. So all my MuseScore 2, all my MuseScore 1, 2, 3, and 4 stuff is all in this same folder just called MuseScore. That is how I have set things up. Because I feel like for me, it's one less thing to have to worry about which things are MuseScore 3, which things are MuseScore 4, which are MuseScore 2. When you go to open the score, it'll gladly tell you, MuseScore 4 will tell you, hey, this is a MuseScore 2 file. And then you know that, oh, I better, be careful if I ever want to open it with MuseScore 2 again, I'm going to save it separately. So I'll demonstrate that in a moment. So I have this file, this folder just called MuseScore, and it has everything in it. You can see that I have templates folder. And I also have a separate copy of the templates 3 and templates 4 folder underneath here so I can keep them straight when I need to. But by default, MuseScore is just looking at a file called a folder called templates. So I'm going to come back to that, all that business in a minute. So I'm using Google Drive for everything. So if I go to my Google Drive scores folder, this is what you normally see. If you ever watch me open a file and you see it open my scores folder, this is actually what it's opening. It's opening a folder on Google Drive. So that is my personal recommendation, because it means now if I save a file on one computer, it will automatically show up on everything else. And Dave is saying that Apple Cloud will do the same sort of thing for you on Mac OS. And again, OneDrive will do the same sort of thing for you on Windows, but Google Drive works across all three of them, which is why, I kind of like that. And yeah, it works on all three, meaning Windows, Mac OS, and Linux or Chromebooks. You could also potentially use Dropbox for that if that's something more comfortable for you. So this is kind of a big picture thing of something that I do that I wasn't going to launch into right away. I was sort of forced into it only because of my technical issue that I'm running this from my Windows machine, where it's a little more complicated. So am I bothered about privacy? Not sure exactly what you mean by that, but if you mean some people refuse to use any Google services at all, no, I'm not one of those people. I'm very comfortable using Google services, but if you're not, then yeah, you would want to just copy your files over on a flash drive every time you move from one computer to another. But having a network failure is not a problem, because all these systems are smart enough to cache things locally. If I'm offline, it's still going to be the case that all of these files are cached locally. And you can set it so that it only caches some of them or caches all of them, but this is all tunable in the settings for Google Drive on your computer. And so I have it set so that my entire scores folder is always kept locally. So it's always going to save a local file and sync it to the cloud. So it's kind of the best of both worlds as far as that goes. All right, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you what happens if I try to open an older file. I'm going to go to my MuseScore 2 subfolder here and open some older score here, like this Prelude and Fugue. And you'll see that it tells you it was last saved in MuseScore 2. Right? So even if I didn't have my files all nicely organized by folder to let me know which ones came from MuseScore 2, MuseScore 3, and so forth, even if I had literally just all thrown them together into one big folder, it's still kind of okay, because when you open an older score, it'll tell you it's an older score, and then it asks you if you want to try to update to newer settings, and I generally do. Sometime I'll talk more about that process, but there's a new feature coming in MuseScore 4.3 that I'm going to be excited to show you as far as that importing process goes. So now that I have this file, notice I just opened it, but there's a little asterisk here. If I try to close this file right now, it's going to ask if I want to save the changes. So I want to be clear about what's happened here. You might think, well, gee, I haven't changed this score at all. But yes, I have. When I loaded it, it asked me a question. Do you want to update to use the newer fonts and newer whatnot, newer settings? I said yes. What if I had said no? Well, either way, I've answered a question, and that answer is now recorded in this file. It's either updated this file, updated the fonts, or it didn't update the font and set a flag to indicate it's using non-default fonts now. So either way, this file is now modified. So at this point, it's going to ask you to save it. And if you say you want to save it, it's not just going to save it directly. it's going to ask you about saving it, right? It's asking, where do I want to save it? Now, if I go ahead and just pick this option and just let it save to the same file, it will overwrite that original file. And therefore, I won't be able to I won't be able to open this in MuseScore 2 anymore. If I think that's a problem, I can do a number of different things. Like, say, sometimes what I do is I just add a 4.2.1. I just put in the file name when I go to save it of the version that I use to save it. If I want to mix and match files in the same folder, that is what I do. I will put dash 4.2.1 or dash 4 sometimes if I really don't want to be that specific. So sometimes I will just add something to the file name to help me keep track of which version it is if I'm mixing and matching within a folder. But this folder here is my MuseScore 2 folder, right? So I'm not going to try to save it in there at all. What I'm going to do instead is I'm going to go back up to my scores folder, and instead of saving it in my MuseScore 2 subfolder, I'm just going to go ahead and find an equivalent location where I can save a MuseScore 4 version. So I'm going to have two totally separate folders. That whole folder there was just for Bach Prelude and Fugues, just for the Well-Tempered Clavier Book 1. I have all the preludes and fugues saved in that folder, and they were all done in MuseScore 2. If I want to have a similar folder in MuseScore 4, I'd have to decide where I want to save that thing. And as you can see, under my scores folder, I've created all of these different subfolders to help me keep track of things. Now, the thing is, I say I created them to help me keep track of things. The reality is I have way too many folders because I've been doing this since 2011 is when I started using MuseScore. 2011, I started using MuseScore. And so I have all of these different folders that are courses. This is where my handouts for my courses are. Downloads. This is where I save files. Not everything that I ever download, but stuff that I download for some bizarre reason, for a demonstration or whatever, and can't think of anywhere better to put it, but I want to keep it. I have another folder called Test, which is full of files. Every time someone ever puts a file somewhere on my website or on MuseScore.org on the support site and says, hey, there's a bug, or I'm having trouble doing blah, blah, blah with this thing, all those files go in my test folder. So these are all files that some of you might recognize, some of your own files in here that you've uploaded before for me to look at. And so these are all the files that I've downloaded just to help test things. And there's so many of them that I've ended up creating them by year. And then, so I have at the end of the year, I'm going to bundle all these things up and put them in a new 2024 folder. But as you can see, I've got a 2023 folder just a few weeks ago. Then I took everything that was in that folder, moved it into 2023 so that there's only stuff that I've saved this year in this folder. So that's not something you would normally do, just have a folder full of downloads. But let's get back to the Well-Tempered Clavier. I really want to have a place where I know I can find those. So I've created a folder that I call Projects. And this is not something, no, it's not under Projects. I take it back. See, that's the thing. I've got too many folders. This is one of my lessons for you, my advice for you. As wonderful as folders are for organizing things, too many isn't good. Too many doesn't really help. So part of the skill of organizing things well is finding the right number. And, 5 years ago, I probably had the right number, but I've just sort of gradually expanded over time. And every once in a while, it will pay you in time long term to simplify things. Like you can see, I've got a folder now called Mastering MuseScore and a separate folder called Outside Shore Music, right? Well, I need to go through that. Now that I've done this sort of migration of mastering MuseScore into Outside Shore Music, I kind of probably should rearrange those folders and get rid of that mastering MuseScore folder from the main level and move it underneath Outside Shore Music. There's a lot of things that I still need to do. Organization is a work in progress. So there's a story that I want to. It's not. It's a. I don't even know how true this story is, but I'm told it is. There was a university that had built like a big green area on their campus with buildings around it, and supposedly they deliberately did not build any like concrete sidewalks crossing the green to connect this building to that building or anything. They just left the green open. And they let people start walking across the green to get from one building to the next. And then at the end of the year, they looked to see where there was a path worn in the grass. Where they found the path, the most well-worn paths in the grass, they're like, oh, that's where people want to be. So we'll pave that. So the general term for this is pave the path they're walking. And this is something that I have taken to heart in my own organization. You might notice within the Outside Shore community, and back when it was the Mastering MuseScore community, every once in a while I'll rename spaces, move a space from one group to another, rearrange things. This isn't change for the sake of change. It is paving the path that you all are walking. When I see how things are being used and the confusions that develop or the things that seem like, oh, wow, people are using this a lot, I should make it easier to find. Those are the sorts of changes that I make. Now, you don't take this lightly because change is always hard, right? But I've got too many folders right now. Some of them I almost never save anything into. Well, this tells me something. It doesn't need to be at this top level. This folder that says standards has no business being at the top level because I never use that folder. You can see right here, the last time it was modified was 2020, right? So this is a folder I created and it had a purpose at the time, and I'm not going to delete the files from it, but I should rethink, well, what is in that folder, and big picture wise, where does that folder belong? Does it belong underneath some other folder? Trying to create a nice hierarchy. So I tell you these things not because I think no one has ever dealt with folders before, but because MuseScore really has a lot of stuff going on, especially when you talk about the different kinds of scores. The different kinds of files, scores, templates, etc. We'll come back to that in a minute. But also the MuseScore 3 versus MuseScore 4. And MuseScore 2 also, same story. MuseScore 3 files can't be opened in MuseScore 2. There's definitely extra stuff to have to think about when organizing your scores. So it's a very personal thing. I can't tell you the right way to do it. I can just show you the things that I'm dealing with. So let's come back to this MuseScore, this prelude and fugue. The place where this is actually stored, where it should be stored, is in a folder that I created called OpenScore. And underneath OpenScore, you'll see I have a subfolder, OpenWTC. And this is my MuseScore 3 or MuseScore 4. These are my updated versions of these files. So you can see that this particular file, the version that I have, was last saved in 2021. That's not MuseScore 4. MuseScore 4 didn't exist in 2021. So I know that this file is more recent than that one, but that's okay. I want this folder to be my most recent files. If I need to get back to the original, I've got them there. They're in that MuseScore 2 folder, right? So I'm just going to go ahead and save right over this thing. And it says, do I want to replace it? And the answer is yes, I do want to replace it. So that score now is been updated for MuseScore 4. And it closed because that's how I started this whole process, was by trying to close it and letting MuseScore tell me, hey, you haven't saved it. Do you want to save it, right? So how you choose to organize your own scores it's really your business for sure. But I'm telling you some of the things that I pay attention to. And by the way, my other computer is up here, and I am going to fire it up, if for no other reason than to show that, in fact, things are synchronized. So I'm going to come over and log in. In a minute. And when I log in on this other system, we're going to see that change that I made is going to be just as visible over there. So give me a second, join as host. So now I'm on my other system. Hey, screen's black. No, it's not. Okay. Did I create any echoes or anything? I hope not. I think I didn't because I've muted myself. But if I now stop my screen sharing over here, and start screen sharing over here, so tell me if I'm creating any echo. I definitely want to know that. I feel like I should mute this speaker as well. Tell me if you're hearing any echo. But if I now come over to MuseScore on this system, and I'll have to start Linux first because I had to reboot. Good, no echo. What we will find is that that score I just saved is over here now on my other computer. So we are now looking at my Chromebook screen. And if I start MuseScore, so what I'm going to do is show you that score exists here and that synchronization worked. I'll talk a little bit more about how I set up that synchronization, but then I want to turn my attention to other files that you want to know about, all right? So what I'm going to do, okay, I'm going to have to think about this. Did I know I started to start MuseScore, but I think something went wrong. Here we go. So if I try to open a score right now, open other, you're gonna see the same. Here's my MuseScores folder, and you see that MuseScore 2 folder in there. You see that projects folder in there. You see the OpenScore folder in here. If I go to OpenScore, Open WTC, we're going to see Prelude and Fugue 4 was just modified today, right? Just a few minutes ago. So the file that I saved on my Windows computer is now on my Chromebook also because I am using Google Drive to synchronize that. So instead of saving, so what I've done is I've basically created under Google Drive a copy of that whole folder structure. So I'm going to show you that folder structure again. That folder structure that I've created on Google Drive has a scores, a templates, sound fonts, and let me sort these things by name. It has a Cloud Scores folder, which isn't used anymore. I'm going to come back to that in a minute. Cloud Scores folder was originally used when you pick the Save to Cloud option, but I don't think it's being used anymore. Extensions is left over from MuseScore 3. It isn't used anymore. Some of these folders are because I was experimenting with things. But there's my scores folder, my sound fonts folder, my styles folder, my templates folder. Right? These are the folders that MuseScore creates by default. So what I'm going to do now, I think, is come back to my Windows computer, because when I talk more about folders, I want to be able to talk about it on Windows. But now I'm happy just to have this available to me. So I'm going to stop my screen share. Oh, wait a minute. Were you even? Yeah, okay. Stop my screen share. And then come back over to my Windows computer and screen share from here. All right. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about the various different kinds of files now. So, so here I am in MuseScore 4. if I go to open the score again, it's going to open in the same folder that I last opened a score from, which was that MuseScore 2 folder. It doesn't remember, it doesn't go back to your scores folder every time. It doesn't use the last file, the last folder you saved to. It opens from the last folder that you opened from. This is a useful thing to know, that when you go to open a score, it's going to use the last folder you opened from by default, which was MuseScore 2 OpenWCC. But if I go to save a score, it will use the last score that I saved to by default. Why is this important? Well, let's create a new score. I just create this thing. Good enough. And let me go to save it. And you'll notice that now it's under my MuseScore 4 folder, right? Actually, that's because this, I haven't saved anything in this version. I only saved an older file. That's complicated. And I was not wanting to have to use the Windows computer for this purpose. So ignore that. Ignore that little thing I just showed you. But what I will say is that MuseScore will open from the last folder you opened from and save to the last folder you saved to. What this means is every once in a while, someone says, hey, I saved a file and now I can't find it. I don't remember what folder I saved it to. All you have to do is create a new file and go to save it. And by default, it's going to try to save it to the same folder as last time. And then you should be able to find your old file there. So that is a useful thing to know. If you ever can't remember the folder that you saved something to because you just weren't paying attention, that's how to find it. Just save something else and it will default to the same folder. You can also use your computer's, like Windows has a way of searching your entire computer to find files. So do all other operating systems. So you can look for files that end in .mscz, right? If I go to open a score now, you'll see all these scores end in .mscz. By the way, if you're on Windows, you might not see the .mscz. This is a thing about Windows, which is one of my least favorite features of Windows, which is that by default, it doesn't show you those extensions. When you look at scores in, if you look at files in Windows in the file browser, it usually won't show you those extensions for files that it recognizes, which is really bad because then you don't know what kind of file it is. You have to rely on the file browser to try to tell you. So there is an option in here. Is it in here? Options. Someone might know where this thing is, but somewhere under view, there's one of these options in here, and it's so ridiculous that you have to hunt for it. But one of these options somewhere, hide extensions for known file types. I cannot recommend strongly enough if you're trying to manage your files on Windows to get to that dialog and turn that option off. Hide extensions for known file types. If you don't turn that off, then it's not going to show you that .mscz. There's nothing in this folder here because everything's on Google Drive. But yeah, when I went to Google Drive and went to that folder, all my scores, you see, do say .mscz, right? They say .mscz there. That's because I've turned that option off. So that's the story. So Frank, I'm not sure what you're saying about looking for extensions, because whether or not File Explorer shows you that extension or not, it's there. So if a virus is trying to find the extension, it's going to find it. This is more about whether you, as a user, are aware of what that extension is. And there is no good reason to not be aware of it. That I've never experienced any good reason. And all it does is create confusion when you see two files that apparently have the same name and you're not sure what's going on. All right, so let's talk about what the other file types are, because I spent a long time just talking about scores, but I want to make sure I talk about other file types, right? So one thing you'll see is there's .mscz comma, the comma at the end. These are files left over from MuseScore 3 and earlier. Okay, so that's interesting that Microsoft's explanation is that, but yeah, I'm not getting it. But in any case, I recommend turning that off. So .mscz comma was the old name for backup files. So in the previous versions of MuseScore, when you would first open a file, MuseScore would create a backup of it. And then you could edit it, make as many changes as you want, and you could at any time get back to the version you started with in that editing session. And that version was this one, .mscz comma. This file is normally hidden. I'm going to come back to hidden in a moment also. MuseScore 4 now works a little differently with backup. It doesn't only create that backup when you first open the score. Every time you save a score, the previously saved version becomes the backup. So that's how MuseScore 4 works with backups. It creates them much more often so that you can always get back a more recent copy. So if I go to one like my test folder here, you're going to see there's a folder here called .mscz backup. And that is where all the backup files go now. You'll see that these are all created in 2024, 2023. These are MuseScore 4 files. And you'll see that their names all begin with periods, and they have tildes at the end of them. The way MuseScore decides to change names of files to create backups, they keep changing how that goes, but that's how it's working right now. Period at the beginning, tilde at the end, and it's in this .msc backup folder. So backup files are found in that folder now from MuseScore 4. This folder, like the backup files themselves, is normally hidden. So on your systems, you might not be seeing that .msc backup folder. There's probably one under my scores also. Yes, there is. So if you're not seeing that folder, you normally don't need to see hidden files. But if you want to look at your backups for whatever reason, you're going to need to do that. So we're going to go back to that same ugly dialog that we went to before. And under view, oh no, not under view, under general is, well, maybe it is under view. Under view, hidden files and folders. You have an option, don't show or show. Why that's 2 radio buttons instead of a single toggle button, you got me. But in any case, I have it set to show the hidden files and folders. I don't necessarily recommend everyone turn that on because most of the time you really don't need it. Most of the time you really don't need to see hidden files. But for the sake of what we're doing today, me showing you where everything is, some of these things are hidden. So you're definitely going to want to have it have that option enabled while you're hunting around for things. So that's the MSC backup folder. That is where the backup files. Every time you save, if you've saved, like if I go to that folder where I just was, OpenScore, OpenWTC, right? That Prelude and Fugue 4 that I just saved today at 10:57. If I go to MSC backup, well, actually, yeah, because that's the thing. I didn't actually edit that file, right? I just opened it and immediately saved it. But if I had opened it first, then saved it, then saved it again, this is where the backup would go. So in fact, let me just do that. I'm going to open that file again. It's still going to the MuseScore 2 version. I want to open it from my current version, which is, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to point out one other thing. If I go to the home screen here, it's now going to show me my recent scores. And I can see now the old version, the MuseScore 2 version that was last modified 8 years ago. And this is the version that I opened today. So I can figure out which of these 2 files is the one I just saved by looking at the date here. But that's a little scary, right? I like having these recent files available, but when you're dealing with hundreds of files scattered all over the place, you really want to have a good solid folder organization scheme that, in your head. So I had previously undocked that thing. So here is my Prelude and Fugue 4. I'm just going to make a little change to it. Take that first thing up an octave. By the way, the reason the beam is wonky here is it had been manually adjusted in MuseScore 2. I'm going to press Control R to reset those beams so that they are just the default beams. They were modified, they were customized in MuseScore 2 because MuseScore 2 had terrible default beaming. But it does mean if you, in an older version, if you make manual adjustments to work around the terribleness of the older engraving, then when you go to start fiddling with it in MuseScore 4, things will be funny. So Control R to reset some of those old questionable adjustments is always like a good idea. I'm going to open my chat on my other screen here so I can follow things. So I'm going to go ahead and save this score now. So I've now saved this score. The asterisk has disappeared. Now I'm going to take another look at my MSC backup folder. And you can see, now the previously saved version, the one from 10:57 a.m., that's what time it was for me. Obviously for you, unless you're in the mountain time zone, it's a different hour. But you can recognize that based on something 57, this was, 10 minutes ago or whatever. So this is the version that I saved 10 minutes ago in the MSC backup folder. Every time now I save, the previous saved version goes there. All right. So that is a good thing to know about. The next thing I want to talk about is autosave. Many of you have heard that term. Maybe you have some idea how it works. Maybe you fought it. Maybe it saved your butt before. But autosave is something that MuseScore does, but think of it as disaster recovery. Don't think of it as a substitute for saving your work. You're always expected to save your work in MuseScore. That is just what you're supposed to do. You save your scores to a file on your computer. Autosave is there to bail you out if there's a system crash and you haven't saved for the last few minutes. It's not there to recover a score that you never, ever, ever saved, right? So think of it as still save often, but autosave will recover your last few minutes worth of work. So I want to show you how to find the autosave file. MuseScore will autosave your score every 2 or 3 minutes, or there's a setting that you can control what that interval is. But it's going to autosave every few minutes, but it puts it in a really kind of weird, funky place. That is one of the reasons why I'm on Windows here, because you're going to want to see how to find this thing. What I have to do to find the autosave file is I have to go to local disk. There's probably maybe a different way to get there. Local disk, users, Marc, and then there's a hidden file here called a hidden folder called app data, and then local. So app data local is the Windows version. If you're on Linux, that folder is called .local. Instead of app data local, it's called .local, but it will also be under user's your name. On Mac OS, someone can help me out here, but I'm told there's a folder called library, and that these types of files are kept under library package, or I don't even know, somewhere under your library folder. So someone who's on Mac who knows this kind of stuff can maybe help me out, because maybe I'm even wrong about the library thing. But what you'll see here is that all these different programs that I've installed over the years, they all put files there. This is the standard Windows place for stuff the program wants to save and not tell you about. That's my best way of describing it. So I want to now find the MuseScore folder under app data local. I'll go to MuseScore, and then you'll see that there's subfolders for all the different versions of MuseScore that I've installed over the years. I want to go to MuseScore 4, and here we're going to see right here is new project.mscz saved today, just a few minutes ago. That's that new score that I've opened up and I haven't saved yet, right? I opened up a score and I haven't saved it. Let's do something else. Let's take this and make a change to this score. Let's move that back down an octave. This score is now modified. And so this folder here is only for files that haven't been saved yet, right? Files that have not been saved yet. That new score that I created a few minutes ago, it's probably still open. It's just empty. I created a new score at some point. So that autosave file is that new score. However, the prelude is actually not there under app data. I'm going to ask for another window here. Can I get another window? Yes, I got another window. I'm going to go back to Google Drive, go back to the same place where I was. MuseScore. Scores. Open score. Open WTC. What we're going to find here is a file that's also hidden that has the same name but has autosave appended to it. I'm not seeing it right now, and maybe it's because it hasn't been 2 or 3 minutes, and maybe it's because I'm confusing myself, but normally you will see a file show up here that has the same name as the file that you're editing, but it just says .autosave after it, and it will also be a hidden file. So that autosave file goes there. Good to know. Window Explorer address bar type %app data. That's good to know that that'll get you there as well. So app data has that kind of stuff. To be honest, I'm not sure why I'm not seeing the autosave in here, because I would think it should have showed up by now, but does it go? It doesn't go under. It doesn't go under MSC backup. You know, I'm a little confused right now, but I'm juggling so many things and still thrown off by the fact that I'm having to do this on Windows that I'm confusing myself. But somewhere in here there should be the update. There should be the autosave file. That's because I've opened up the right version of it here. If I save it again, does it update here? Update 1042. Oh, it's down at the bottom of the list now, 1120, because I have it sorted by date, apparently. But yeah, I'm not sure what happened to my autosave here, and that's bothering me a little bit, but I'm not going to dwell on it because I do want to get to the other files now. So let's talk about what else is here under app data. Under app data, or whatever your operating system equivalent is, you're going to find a few other things. Cloud scores. These are local copies. If you've used the Save to Cloud feature, which I personally don't really recommend, I just don't trust it. It's not that I don't trust cloud services at all. I use Google Drive and I rely on it heavily. But the Save to Cloud thing, the way it integrates with MuseScore.com and the way it manages all this, I just don't understand it well enough to trust it. And I've seen too many reports of someone saying, oh, I saved something to the cloud and I don't know how to find it. And then you end up having to get it out of this folder. So anything that you save to cloud using the MuseScore 4 Save to Cloud folder, MuseScore will save another copy of it for you on your computer. Even though you didn't ask it to save it on your computer, it does. It's under that same thing. App data, local, MuseScore 4. I should just widen this window. Cloud scores. And this is where anything that I have used Save to Cloud on, there will be a local copy in here. Now, the files in this folder won't have the name of your score. They won't be named Prelude and Fugue 4. They will be named just a series of numbers. And that number is the ID of that score on MuseScore.com. So if you view a score on MuseScore.com, you'll see that the URL for it's got a bunch of numbers in it. Those numbers will become the file name that shows up in this folder. I suspect if I go to File Properties right now, File Project Properties, this number right here, where it says Source, this number right here, that is the ID number for this score on MuseScore.com. If you use Save to Cloud, that number there will become the file name in that Cloud Scores folder. So yeah, and it's possible that the autosave location has moved since the last time that I used that feature. It is bothering me a little bit, as you can tell, that I cannot find that dang thing, because I really thought that that's where they were. But maybe they've all moved under app data, and I should just look a little closer under app data. Is this possible that all these things have moved to app data? If I go to session, no, it's not there. Yeah, so these are places where crash logs are saved. Also, if you ever create different workspaces on my Chromebook, so these, even though I'm using Google Drive to synchronize all my scores across computers, nothing else is, well, and other things too. I'll show you those in a moment. This app data stuff is not synchronized. So this is per system. So if I create a new workspace, or if I customize some settings in the preferences dialog, those all get saved in folders like this that are separate on each computer. So if I create a workspace, it goes into here. But yeah, I'm still just not sure what's going on with the autosave file, and that's bugging me, but I will sort that out and try to follow up with this later. Let's talk about some of the other file types, though, that MuseScore deals with, all right? So if I come back to my scores folder here and go up one level, what we're going to see are all those other folders here. And again, some of these, I created my own versions of them. Plugins, these are plugins. And these are things that you download. MuseScore comes with some plugins pre-installed, but they won't be in this folder. The pre-installed ones are off in MuseScore's own folders, which is somewhere specific to your operating system. And we're not going to touch that ever. Never touch the files in the actual MuseScore installation. But underneath your MuseScore folder, you will have a plugins folder, just like you have a scores folder. And these are the plugins that I have downloaded myself, or that I've written myself. So plugins go there, and these have the extension .qml. So plugins go into that folder. You will also find sound fonts here. These will generally have the extension SF2 or SF3. MuseScore 3 and early, well, MuseScore 2 and 3 supported a format called SFZ. Or was it only 3? I forget. SFZ was supported, but now in order to use SFZ files, you have to go through a VST thing. So anyhow, that's all a separate thing. These are where SF2 and SF3 files go. These are sound fonts that allow you to use different sounds. MuseSounds is not here. MuseSounds is somewhere else entirely. Don't mess with that. The built-in sound font for MuseScore is within the MuseScore folder. Within the actual MuseScore program. Don't mess with that. But these are sound fonts that I have downloaded myself from somewhere online. They go into that sound fonts folder. Then styles. I've every once in a while talk about this, but you can create your own style files. Like if you set up a score, say you set up a score and then you customize all your text fonts so that instead of being Edwin's I always forget Edwin and Leland now, which is the text and which is the music font, but whatever. You customize all your fonts to be some other font that you really like, Comic Sans or something. Whatever font you select for all your fonts, and then for all your text things, and maybe make other style setting changes, and then you say, hey, I want to use that same set of styles in another score. You can, in MuseScore, go to Format, Save Style. When you pick Save Style, it's going to pick that styles folder by default, or at least it should. If not, use it. And this is where you can save scores and save styles. And again, this is because I haven't used this. I haven't set it up to be my Google Drive version of things on this computer. That's why it looks empty here. because this is my OneDrive version, but I'm not using OneDrive, I'm using Google Drive. But in any case, the styles, this will create files .mss, and then once you've saved a style, you can load it into another score. Like there's this one here that says Petaluma. If I come back to my score here, and now I say format load style, yes, there's nothing in there because, as I just said, that's not the right place for it because it's really on Google Drive. But what I should do is click on scores, go up a level, and then styles. If I pick Petaluma now, what you'll see is that the notation changes to the Petaluma font because that is what I saved in that style file previously. I set up a score that way. All right, Chris is asking about custom palette files, and coincidentally, that was going to be the next big thing I was going to cover here. Let's say that you've created a custom palette, right? You've added some stuff to your score, customized it, and now you want to save that palette. Like let's say under my text palette, I want to have a piece of text that says, hello there, and I want that text to be red. I can make that text red. Edwin is the text font. That's kind of what I thought. And then click on appearance, set the color to be red. And now I have some red text that I can then add back to my palette with Control, Shift, drag. And now I got my hello there text. And now if I want to save that palette, I can click my ... and say save palette. Now, if I don't do this, if I don't save the palette, that's okay. It gets saved as part of the workspace. I showed you that workspace folder before. But what we have here is the ability to save this palette separately, and then I can load it into onto my other computer. So what I'm going to do is I click that ... then save palette. Now, when you save a palette, you'll see the default extension is .mpal. That's where you leave that alone. Now, where do you save it? Well, that doesn't actually matter. You can save it wherever you want. But since I have my MuseScore folder nicely synchronized on Google Drive, this is where I've been saving my custom palettes. So you'll see that I've got some custom palettes I've already defined here. Ukulele chords that I downloaded from somewhere. Some of these I just created for testing purposes. Some of them are actually useful. This one I have called Annotations is a really nice palette that I created that's got all sorts of annotations. And in fact, I don't think I have that palette loaded here. So let's go ahead and load a palette so you can see that process. ... load palette. And I want to get to that same folder because it's unfortunately not defaulting to the same place. So I go to my scores folder, go up a level to MuseScore, and there it is, annotations. If I load that guy, it shows up here. It's got all these nice little annotation symbols that I use all the time in creating my worksheets and so forth. So there's obviously so much to talk about here, and I probably didn't cover every single thing that I said I was going to cover, in part because I got thrown off at the beginning with the technical issues. But we can always come back and talk about some of those other topics, but I certainly covered the most important things that I wanted to cover. And in fact, I'm just going to take a quick look at my list to see if there was anything super burning before I hang up here. Anything that I said I was going to cover and didn't that I could at least spend 1 minute on. No, that's everything. Everything I said I was going to talk about, I talked about to some extent. So that's the show. And since I am over here now I'm going to, I think my MuseScore Café theme music is not going to play, and so I'm not going to worry about it. And we'll just go out without it, unfortunately, today. So tomorrow, Music Masterclass, right? Tomorrow for Music Masterclass. Let me unshare screen here. Hi, everyone. Okay, Music Masterclass tomorrow is going to be special edition. We're going to talk all about the counterpoint course, what it's going to be like, what kind of stuff you're going to learn in it. Who's it right for, how to sign up, all the questions that you might have about the counterpoint course. That's going to be the subject tomorrow, and I'll teach you some counterpoint along the way. Right? I mean, I'm going to actually show you some stuff about counterpoint to give you a sense of what the course is about. And so that's what Music Masterclass will be about tomorrow. I really hope to see a lot of you there and hope to see as many of you as possible in the course itself because it's going to be awesome. That's what I can say. So, that's my cafe theme. Everyone have a great day, and I'll catch you tomorrow.